Argentina, a land of tango, football, and chronic economic crises, took a sharp turn to the right in December 2023 with the election of Javier Milei, a man who makes Ted Cruz look like a cuddly socialist. This was a seismic shift in the political landscape of a country that had long been mired in economic turmoil and political corruption. Milei's rise wasn't just a fluke, it was the culmination of years of public discontent and a yearning for radical change. This wasn't your average politician promising the moon and the stars. Milei was different. He was a firebrand. A disruptor who didn't just want to tweak the system, but to overhaul it completely. This was a self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist, a label that should make anyone with a functioning frontal lobe slightly nervous. His ideas were not just unconventional, they were radical, even by libertarian standards. Imagine a libertarian who just discovered Ayn Rand after shotgunning a case of Red Bull, and you're getting close. His energy was frenetic, his ideas were extreme, and his followers were fervent. Milei campaigned on a platform that can only be described as shock and awe economics. He didn't just want to cut government spending, he wanted to slash it to the bone. His rallying cry? Drastic government spending cuts, ditching the beleaguered Argentine peso for the US dollar, and cozying up to the US and Israel. These were not just policy proposals, they were declarations of war against the status quo. It was a cocktail of radicalism that would make Milton Friedman spin in his grave, but it resonated with an electorate battered by years of economic mismanagement and corruption. People were tired of the same old promises that never materialized. The people were angry, they were desperate for change, and Milei, with his fiery rhetoric and promises of a libertarian utopia, offered a seductive if terrifyingly uncertain path forward. His speeches were filled with a sense of urgency and a call to action that many found irresistible. He was the outsider, the anti-establishment figure who promised to smash the system. And in a country where the system had consistently failed them, that was a message many were eager to hear. Milei's rise to power was not just a political event. It was a social phenomenon, a reflection of a society at its breaking point, ready to embrace radical solutions for deeply rooted problems. Once in office, Milei didn't disappoint. Well, he didn't disappoint if your idea of a good time is watching a government dismantle itself with the efficiency of a toddler on a sugar rush. The chaos was palpable, with every corner of the government machinery feeling the tremors of his radical reforms. True to his word, the spending cuts were brutal, like a budget hawk on a rampage through a government office. Departments that had stood for decades were suddenly finding themselves without funding, their operations ground to a halt. 13 ministries? Gone, reduced to rubble in the name of efficiency. The halls of power echoed with emptiness as entire departments were shuttered overnight, leaving a vacuum where once there was bureaucracy. 30,000 public sector employees, shown the door, handed their pink slips with a wave and a good luck out there. The human cost of these cuts was staggering, with families suddenly finding themselves without a source of income. And the dollarization? That happened too, because nothing screams economic stability like tethering your entire financial system to a currency you have absolutely zero control over. The move was controversial to say the least, sparking debates and protests across the nation. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by connecting it to the Hoover Dam. Bold, unconventional, and with a high probability of making the entire house explode. The risks were enormous, and the potential for disaster loomed large. The result of this economic blitzkrieg? Well, it wasn't pretty. Businesses shuttered, the financial district looked like a ghost town, and the average citizen was left grappling with the fallout. Imagine the financial equivalent of performing open-heart surgery with a rusty butter knife, and you're getting close. The precision needed to navigate such drastic changes was sorely lacking, leading to widespread economic pain. Inflation, which was already doing a pretty good impression of a runaway train before Milei took over, went full supernova. Prices soared, and the value of the peso plummeted, leaving the economy in a tailspin. The cost of basic goods skyrocketed, wages stagnated, and the Argentine middle class found itself on a one-way trip to struggle city. The dream of economic stability seemed further away than ever as the nation grappled with the harsh realities of Milei's shock therapy. Now you might be thinking, John, surely these economic reforms, as disastrous as you make them sound, must be benefiting someone. And you'd be right. But the reality is far more complex and disheartening than you might imagine. While a tiny fraction of the population has indeed reaped the rewards, the vast majority have been left to grapple with the fallout. Unfortunately, that someone is a very small group of already wealthy Argentines and foreign investors who swooped in to buy up Argentine assets at fire sale prices. These opportunistic players have capitalized on the economic turmoil, further entrenching their wealth and power while the rest of the country suffers. For the vast majority of Argentines, Milei's presidency has been an unmitigated disaster, a masterclass in how to turn an economic crisis into a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe. The policies implemented have not only failed to address the underlying issues, but have exacerbated them, leading to widespread suffering and despair. Poverty, which was already a significant problem in Argentina, exploded under Milei's watch. The social safety nets that once provided a semblance of security have been eroded, leaving countless families in dire straits. The sight of long queues outside soup kitchens has become a common and heartbreaking reality. Imagine a graph where the line representing poverty is a rocket, fueled by economic incompetence and a callous disregard for the poor, blasting off into the stratosphere. This visual metaphor starkly illustrates the rapid and devastating rise in poverty levels, a direct consequence of misguided policies and a lack of empathy for the most vulnerable. That's Argentina under Milei. The once vibrant and hopeful nation has been reduced to a landscape of despair and struggle. Families who once had dreams of a better future now find themselves trapped in a cycle of poverty and hopelessness, with little to no support from the government. People who were barely scraping by before were suddenly plunged into abject poverty, forced to choose between feeding their families and paying rent. And the inequality? It has reached unprecedented levels, creating a chasm between the rich and the poor that seems insurmountable. Well, let's just say that the gap between the haves and the have-nots in Argentina is starting to look like the Grand Canyon. The stark contrast between the opulent lifestyles of the wealthy and the dire conditions of the poor is a glaring indictment of the current administration's failures. On one side, you have the wealthy elite, sipping champagne in their gated communities, their wealth insulated from the economic chaos engulfing the rest of the country. These enclaves of affluence stand in sharp contrast to the widespread poverty and suffering that define the lives of millions of Argentines. On the other side, you have millions of Argentines struggling to survive, their dreams and aspirations crushed under the weight of Milei's disastrous policies. The human cost of these policies is immeasurable, leaving a nation divided and a populace in despair. Section 4. Selling the family silver Argentina, the resource colony? But wait, there's more! As if plunging millions into poverty wasn't bad enough, Milei also seemed determined to turn Argentina into a resource colony for multinational corporations. Remember all those spending cuts? Well, they weren't just limited to social programs and government agencies. Milei also took a chainsaw to environmental regulations, opening up vast swaths of Argentina's pristine wilderness to mining and logging companies. It was a fire sale on a national scale, with Argentina's natural resources being sold off to the highest bidder, often with little regard for the environmental consequences. Lithium, the white gold used in batteries for electric vehicles, became particularly sought after, with foreign companies tripping over themselves to get a piece of Argentina's vast reserves. The result? Increased deforestation, polluted rivers, and a growing sense that Argentina was being hollowed out from within, its natural wealth extracted and shipped abroad, leaving behind a trail of environmental devastation and social unrest. It was enough to make you wonder if Milei had missed his calling as a 19th-century colonial administrator. Section 5. Uncle Sam's Backyard, the Geopolitical Shift. As if the economic and social turmoil weren't enough, Milei also decided to use his presidency to shake up Argentina's foreign policy. Remember those promises of closer ties with the US and Israel? Well, Milei wasn't kidding. He embraced both countries with the enthusiasm of a long-lost relative who just won the lottery, much to the chagrin of many Argentines, who viewed the US with a healthy dose of suspicion, and for good reason. Out went any pretense of neutrality in global affairs. Milei pulled Argentina out of regional alliances, distanced the country from China and Russia, and basically turned Argentina into a wholly owned subsidiary of US foreign policy. He even went so far as to grant the US military access to Argentine bases, a move that sent shockwaves through the region and raised serious concerns about Argentina's sovereignty. It was a dramatic geopolitical shift, one that left many wondering who was really calling the shots in Buenos Aires. Was it Milei, the self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist, Or was it Uncle Sam, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, using Argentina as a pawn in its global chess game?
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.